Today on Teach Online TV, I have a guest, and we're going to be talking about building your personal brand, developing your breakthrough ideas, and most importantly, building a following around your brand and your ideas. And I know that's something we could all use some help with. My guest is a two-time author working on a new book now, and she has interviewed the likes of Al Gore, Tim Ferris, Mark Zuckerberg, and Seth Golden to help develop her ideas and share with you how to build your personal brand. Her first book, Reinventing You, helps you reinvent yourself and build your personal brand. And her second one, Stand Out, has been recognized as the #1 leadership book in 2015 by Inc. magazine. And it's going to help you find your breakthrough idea and build that audience around it. If you're not already following Dorie Clark, you definitely should be, as I know you can learn a lot from her. Let's see what Dorie has to say. All right, Dorie, it's really good to have you here. I know that you are a marketing strategist. Something that I really have found interesting is the books that you've been putting out. Stand Out, named a #1 leadership book by Inc. magazine, and Reinventing You, a book on personal branding. And I love the whole branding side, especially personal branding side of things. And I know that a lot of our audience is very interested in that. So really excited to be speaking with you here today. And another area that I think definitely the people in our audience are interested in is that you teach, and you've done a lot of teaching as an adjunct professor at Duke University and the School of Business there, and also guest lecturing at places like Harvard Business School. So it's very wonderful to have you here, and really exciting to be talking to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Greg. I'm really glad to have the chance. Yeah, thank you. There have been a lot, and in fact, that was really the genesis and the inspiration for my first book, Reinventing You. But basically, I studied philosophy as an undergrad, and then went to graduate school for theology. And after I got my master's degree, I thought I would go on to get a doctorate in literature. And I actually got turned down by all of the doctoral programs that I applied to. So that was not going to happen. And so my first reinvention was just having to come up with a totally different plan. So I became a newspaper reporter, which was actually a pretty good plan. I felt pretty solid about that, except I picked the worst time in world history to be a newspaper reporter, and the industry was collapsing thanks to Craigslist and the internet just as I joined. And so a year later, I got laid off. So then I transitioned into from covering politics to working on political campaigns, and I was a spokesperson for two actually very prominent campaigns. One as a gubernatorial race in the U.S. and the other a presidential campaign. They both lost. And so I had one more big reinvention into being a nonprofit executive director. And it was in the course of running this nonprofit for a couple of years that I realized that basically running a nonprofit is exactly the same thing as running a small business. And I thought, aha, I should do this for myself. I should become an entrepreneur. And so that was my final big reinvention, was 10 years ago now, shifting into having my own business where I write and speak and teach and consult. Yeah, it definitely does take a while. I was having a call with a client this morning, actually, who was feeling really discouraged because she's been trying to do this kind of brand building stuff for a few months, and she said it felt like it wasn't getting anywhere. And the truth is, in a few months, it's never going to get anywhere. You have to kind of have to do it for a few years before you see results. But the advantage of that is that by the time you start seeing the results, a lot of people have already dropped out because they've gotten discouraged, and so they're not doing it. So for me, it was 2009 when I really decided I wanted to publish a book. I wanted to make that happen. And so I wrote 3 different book proposals, tried to get them out there, tried to get publishers interested in it. Nobody was interested because I was not famous enough. And so I needed to essentially go back to square one. And so I spent about a year trying fairly unsuccessfully to even just break in and to get to be able to write for major publications. After that, I would say it took me probably between 2 and 3 years of very regular writing to start having inbound inquiries for consulting, for speaking, for coaching as a result of the articles, the brand that I had built, things like that. But What did happen faster, which I was really pleased about, was in 2011. I was so about a little less than 2 years after I sort of hit this realization that I needed to start blogging to build my platform. 2011 was when I signed my contract for my first book. So that process took a little while, and then it took another couple of years for the book to come out. So what I've discovered is that if you're taking the right steps, you will see progress eventually. You will get there, but it always takes longer than you want it to. Yeah, so it really depends on your goal. For me, my goal very clearly from the beginning was that I wanted to publish a book, and so I knew that whatever I could do to get external credibility, so-called social proof, would be really valuable to me in terms of being able to convince publishers that I had a following and that I was reputable enough to earn the right to do a book. So my goal from the beginning was to try to write for the larger publications first. So I focused like a laser on that. If you have a different goal, if, for instance, you want to develop a blog and monetize your blog, then it's not a bad idea, like a Seth Godin or like a Chris Brogan, to focus on creating content on your own site. A hybrid model that actually I think is pretty good as well is one that a gentleman named James Clear has done, in which he writes on his blog first. He publishes his content on the blog first, but then he syndicates it to other publications. Not every publication will take so-called second-run content. A lot of people require that it is original, but he's found sites that are willing to take it, and then he just links back with it. Says, "Hey, subscribe to my newsletter," and so he's been able to build up a pretty good number of followers that way. Yeah, so this is a really common scenario that I think there is, to a certain extent, a cultural myth about how great ideas are formed, which is that many people assume that it's like a lightning strike, and it's just like, oh well, one day, it pops into your head, and you have this amazing idea that is world changing. And the truth is, having interviewed more than 50 top thought leaders for Stand Out, and essentially trying to reverse engineer the process by which they developed and became known for their breakthrough ideas, what I discovered was that the opposite, in fact, is far more common, which is that instead of just having a bolt from the blue idea, what happens is that you need to place yourself in a position so that you are working in this area so that the idea can come to you iteratively. Because the truth is, a lot of times you just need to roll up your sleeves, start doing something, and it's in the course of doing the research, being enmeshed in this field, having the conversations, doing the interviews, that the holes present themselves and that they are somehow, suddenly manifest. So I think that's the first thing, is almost, an attitude change, that don't be looking for the lightning strike. It comes from the tilling of the soil. But what are a few ways that you can begin to do this? I mean, one that I'll actually suggest, which is kind of meta because you're doing this now, is the importance of doing original research. And I think when I express it that way, some people might think, oh my gosh, that sounds complicated. That sounds like you have to get a doctorate or something. Really what I mean by original research is that in this world, there's a lot of people who have opinions. It's, here's what you should do to get sales, or here's what you should do to lose weight, or whatever your topic is. But if you're doing research, meaning you are creating original content that is based in fact rather than opinion, you are actually really contributing to the dialogue. So that could mean anything from conducting a survey to doing interviews for blogs or for podcasts or whatever with actual experts. It could mean doing reviews of products, whatever it is, but it's about adding value in a very systematic way. And if you do that consistently, then you are actually going to be viewed pretty rapidly as an expert, because you have access to a lot more knowledge and a lot more facts than most people out there.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great approach, definitely. And I've seen the times that I've done that stuff, it works quite well. I know that yeah, I do also see people going kind of the opposite direction where they, and maybe aren't as successful, where they're sort of just duplicating things that are already out there and rewriting a lot of topics. So this idea of being original and coming up with that original approach, I think obviously, as you say, if you want to build your own brand and come up and stand out, then doing things that are original is obviously quite important.
Absolutely. And especially for people who maybe haven't totally formulated their own point of view at this point, maybe they're kind of newly in a field, they might feel like that's a big handicap. But the truth is, right out of the gate, you don't have to. If you say, you know what, I'm going to make myself an expert in this topic because I'm going to interview 100 people who are experts in the topic, by the time you get to that 100th interview, you're going to have a point of view. You have talked to enough people, you've seen enough things, you've spent enough time, putting in your quote unquote 10,000 hours that you are going to have a much more finely honed sense of the field and the issues and the problems and the lacunae just from having done that. And along the way, you will have become an expert through talking to other experts and adding value to other people by shining light on these ideas. Yeah, I mean, the truth is, there's basically no new ideas in the world. And if we just said, oh, that's already been done. I mean, what if Aristotle was like, oh, I really shouldn't write this treatise. Plato already did it. I mean, for anything, you can basically say, oh, somebody's done it before. The real question is, yeah, they might be talking about your topic in a very broad sense, but they're not talking about it from your perspective. What is unique about you? What can you bring to the table? If Andrew Warner's doing all kinds of interesting interviews on Mixergy, that's great. But what if you said, well, you know what? I'm a millennial, so I'm just going to do a series with the best interviews with the best millennial entrepreneurs. Or I love food issues, and so I'm gonna do a series where I talk to food entrepreneurs. That's very distinct. That's different. And you're going to be able to build a very dedicated tribe because they might like what Andrew Warner's doing. They might freaking love what you're doing because it speaks very, very directly to those passions.
That's a great way of looking at it. And I think, too, when you start to see other people doing something in that space, it's actually usually an indication, too, that there's a demand for that area. And then you're right, if you go into that, in that niche area and you get really specific, then you can even pick up more on that demand. But it's already been proven by other people out there doing it. I actually get a little bit scared when I look into a space I'm considering doing something in and I see nobody doing it. There's crickets and you're like, why is that? Maybe nobody wants to learn about, that kind of topic.
Yeah, it can definitely be an ominous sign.
Yeah. And I love how you kind of everything, all of the interviews I've listened to with you and a lot of the stuff that I've read, you really focus on the storytelling side of things. Even your book Stand Out, it starts from a whole series of really wonderful interviews with some amazing people like Seth Golden, and then in everything that you explain, you've got these great analogies and stories and real world. So it's not just you saying, hi, I'm Dorie and I've got some ideas about this. You've actually gone out there and talked to experts and really you can share those specific examples of how these things have been applied in life.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's interesting because my training as a journalist, to a certain extent, I mean, it's very good training. I also have to kind of overcome it in some ways because we all have these sort of biases. As a journalist, the mandate is always don't talk about yourself. You're not the story. Keep yourself out of the story. And so I've actually had to learn to include just a little bit more about my story because, people ask and they're interested in things like that. And I've come to realize that it can be powerful. It can be valuable to share your own experiences. But yeah, my bias from the beginning and my training has always been, how do you extract stories from other people to really shine a light on them and what their experience is, because that's the best teacher. I mean, almost anything in business books, if you actually distill, you can take a 300-page business book and distill it usually into a page, right? Like, be nice to people. You should keep in touch. Stuff like that. It's ridiculous. We all know it. There's not to say that business books don't have good information. They often do. But the thing is, if it's a list of rules like the 10 Commandments, no one's going to remember, no one's going to care, and it's going to sound shallow. The thing that actually can change people's lives is if they hear a story that they can relate to, and they say, yes, that finally sinks in, that finally hits me. This is for me. This is the model that I'm going to use. And if you have that, that's everything. Well, one of the things that has actually made a really big difference for me that I tried to double down on this year is the creation of a really interesting and useful free giveaway. Because that, if you just say to people, oh, subscribe to my email newsletter, that doesn't sound that exciting. Everybody says, oh my God, I have way too many of those already. And there's just no value proposition. Why would you do that? But if you're able to tell people, hey, I have this thing that could be really helpful and valuable to you, would you like it? It gives them a reason to sign up, to give you a chance to, and you essentially have the ability to try then to earn the right to stay in touch with them if you're providing information that is useful and interesting enough. And so for me, starting right around the release of my new book, Stand Out, I created this workbook, which is a free 42-page workbook that people can download off my website. And it walks them step by step through the process of developing their breakthrough idea and building a following around it. And as a result of creating that, which actually didn't take that long, it was adapted from my book. I had the designers from the publisher do it, so that they handled it and made it really a handsome document. But it took very little of my own time. But I've been able to use that to double my email list, more than double, over the course of the year, from about 10,000 at the beginning of the year to right now it's over 25,000. So if folks are actually interested in getting the guide, yeah, thank you. If they're interested in getting the guide, both to kind of work through it and develop their own thought leadership, or just to check it out, as a lead magnet to see, how they might do something similar, they can download it on my website for free at dorieclark.com, which is DORIECLARK. I actually felt totally okay about it, because if it was something that took me 300 hours to do, then maybe it's not a worthwhile trade-off to give that for free. But I had already done the work as a product of writing my book. So all of the questions, essentially the format that I used for it was at the end of every section of Stand Out, I have a series of ask yourself questions. And that was something that I developed as I was writing the book, sort of over the course of, a year-long period. And so the work was already done, it was already in the book. But then I realized, if someone's reading a book in real time, they're not necessarily going to be answering the questions and scrawling their answers in the margin. That's not a very user-friendly experience. They could, I guess, type it on their computer or something, but wouldn't it be great if I could make it easy for them? If they liked the book, if they were interested in it, they could download it as a workbook that's already made up. They can print it out. It has spaces for them to write their answers. It's, a real tool. And so basically all I did was grab the questions at the end of each section. And there were a lot of them. There were 139 questions. I put them together and then had the designers put it into a nice document. So in total, it probably took me maybe an hour and a half total to do that. But it was able to be turned into a really great guide. So I think that you can strike that balance between something that is actually valuable to your audience, but in some ways is reworking or repurposing content so that you're not having to create this whole separate thing and spend a lot of time with it. That is kind of an ideal giveaway.
Excellent. Okay. And just we've kind of talked at length about it, but just so we can hear again, where they can get access that at your website, that's dorieclark.com.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah, and for people who aren't sure on the spelling, it's DORIECLARK.com. Excellent.
We will definitely share that with them.
Thanks.
Well, I really appreciate having you here and chatting. I think I've learned some, and I really hope that our audience, and I know that they'll learn some about this, about building your following, coming up with your great ideas. And I think a lot of the stuff that you share on your site as well is I've found useful in terms of talking to people about building their brand and coming up with their breakthrough idea. So thank you very much, Dorie.
Hey, Greg, it's awesome to talk with you. Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're looking for more information, check out the resources below, leave a comment, ask a question. I'd be happy to answer them. You can also check out Thinkific.com right here, or if you'd like to subscribe for more information, subscribe here. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again soon.